So you probably know at this point, either through a forum post, a YouTube video, or something like that, that Fallout 76 is taking place in Vault 76, and we know about this vault. We know some of the information about it, and we've heard about it in previous Fallouts. In this video, I want to kind of overview all of that and show you some new information that came out, a reference in Fallout 4 that might actually indicate the location or a more precise location for Fallout 76. There's been kind of a trend of referencing the next Fallout game in the previous one. I mean, there's really only 2 data points for this, Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, but as a result of this, a lot of people are looking through Fallout 4 to try and figure out where Fallout 5 would take place. A lot of people are speculating San Francisco, because when you go through Kellogg's memories, there's a lot of references to San Francisco, and this is largely based off the fact that the Commonwealth, the Institute, and of course Boston itself were all talked about in Fallout 3 numerous times. Although this trend is somewhat continued through Fallout 4 to Fallout 76, not nearly as heavily as it was from Fallout 3 to Fallout 4. Fallout 76 is mentioned in Fallout 4 in the intro sequence. As you're in the pre-war segment and you're in your house listening to the news, there's actually a lot of other people talking if you don't delete them. So it's something you probably missed the first time around, but evidently some people picked up on this. This one's pretty well known.
Since debuting Vault 76 last year, in honor of America's tercentenary, Vault-Tec continues to expand with plans for well over 100 vaults around the country.
But as you could probably tell, that really doesn't indicate anything. It just kind of mentions Vault 76 as being a vault that is created. It's really the terminal entries from Fallout 3 that indicate the most about this. There's only a few listings, but it actually gives us some of the details about the vault, the occupancy, how long it's supposed to be closed for, things like that. It doesn't tell us the location though, it just says Greater DC region. And this is largely the information we've been going off of for a lot of the speculation. A lot of people figuring out where this is going to be located, in addition to the actual trailer having West Virginia sung in the background.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain.
Well, now we have another piece of information that was really only popularized yesterday from a Reddit post that may suggest a more accurate representation of where this game's going to take place. Throughout the Commonwealth, there's a bunch of these little satellite dishes that you can put up, or sometimes you have to put up through a quest. Well, one in particular, Radio Tower 3SM-U81, and after you extend the dishes on this radio tower, you're actually going to get a few new radios. One of these is going to be the Greenbrier radio signal. Greenbrier specifically is a resort in West Virginia. It's known for having a massive bunker underneath it in case of an actual threat in the United States for Congress to move to. The resort itself is just a hotel, a very nice hotel, but over 26 presidents have stayed there. It's something that is very actively used by members of the US government. It's important to note at this point that the Fallout world obviously diverged from real world. There's a pretty specific time frame as to when this happened. It's after 1945. But there's not like a specific date, so it's largely regarded as around the 1950s and 1960s, Fallout universe takes over, and it's different from the real world. This bunker was created in the late 1950s, so it is totally plausible that it could exist in Fallout, and it likely does, or at least some recreation of this. Just some miscellaneous details that says the bunker has 30 years of supplies, at least the real world variant. Of course, they could change that in Fallout, but it's also meant to house different members of Congress. Something I've been theorizing a lot of lately is we see the Enclave, or a splinter cell of the Enclave, in Fallout 76. If you don't know, a large portion of the United States government, including the president and other members of Congress, did go to the Poseidon oil rig, but not everybody went there. I think it would be totally plausible that some of the members of Congress went to the Greenbrier bunker. They only had 30 years of supplies. The game takes place 25 years after the bombs drop. Maybe we'll have some interactions with a different Enclave than we're used to. Again, that's totally speculation, but it seems like based on the evidence we have here, it is set up pretty nicely. So as far as location goes, on a map, there's quite a few different things indicated by this. It's likely now that we know the Greenbrier Hotel or Resort will actually be included in Fallout 76. It's not totally confirmed, but I feel like all these teases to it and just how notable of a location this is and how well it fits into the Fallout universe make it pretty likely. So one of the major things that should stand out to you is there's actually a national forest right next to this location, and I imagine they're going to have to implement that in some way. The George Washington and Jefferson National Forest is literally right next to this hotel. I imagine you're going to see that somewhat, maybe even have a community of people settled there. Outside of that, one other really notable location over here is Roanoke. This, of course, having some pretty crazy history behind it. If you don't know, there's more or less like a whole colony set up there, and then it suddenly disappeared very quickly thereafter. Maybe Bethesda's going to parallel that in the Fallout universe in modern times, and all around, it just seems like it's a pretty interesting location. It has a good mix of a few cities around, but at the same time, there is some significant rural areas also. So whether or not we're actually going to get to see parts of Fallout 3 is not entirely clear by this. There is a pretty big distance between this location and Washington, D.C. at about 4 hours, but at the same time, it definitely is plausible that we'll get to at least the outskirts of D.C. and maybe some of the border areas of Fallout 3, getting to experience some of those previous towns. If you actually look at a real-world map, Vault 87 and Little Lamplight are both fairly close locations to the Greenbrier Resort. Maybe those two could make up the end of the map and we could actually see the establishment of those and get to visit Vault 87 way ahead of time. Now this is again total speculation. Bethesda may just choose to have no overlap between the games, which I think is totally plausible. But outside of that, the next two closest locations would actually be Tenpenny Tower and Evergreen Mills. Getting to re-experience Tenpenny Tower I think could be really freaking interesting, and I think a lot of us would enjoy that. I'll have a link down below to the actual location on Google Maps, and there's also a fan-made kind of Google Maps of real-world Fallout locations that you can look at and kind of compare the two. Obviously, none of this is confirmed, but again, as I kind of said previously, I think it's pretty likely we'll see this in Fallout 76. It just seems like if it's going to really take place on the border of West Virginia and Virginia, this is too notable and too cool of a location to just pass up. I mean, wouldn't you want to explore a massive resort with golf courses and all that and a massive bunker under it? I would. Either way, it's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this one, but before we end things off, we are going to have today's psychology fun fact of the day. And what I want to talk about today is this thing called Savin Syndrome. So this is going to be this pretty rare phenomenon, more or less people with mental deficits, so typically autism, but other issues with your mind, such as CNS injury and things like that, can lead to this occurring, but either way, it's going to be like the stereotypical thing you've seen in movies. I think The Accountant's actually probably a good example of recent, someone that's autistic that actually does have remarkable skills in one field. Typically, this is actually associated with insanely good memory. There's actually this one guy named Raymond Babbitt who memorized 6,000 books. So he had this massive library of knowledge in his head that he could seemingly access at any time. If you've ever seen the movie Rain Man, it's actually based off of that guy in real life who had Savin Syndrome. But there's actually a few others even beyond that. A few instances of people that happened to be both blind and autistic but had amazing musical ability, being able to play things and learn music extremely fast and to an extremely high degree. So obviously with pretty much everything, this is actually going to be on a spectrum. There are some people that obviously have deficits in one area and are particularly keen in another, and then there's ones where it's like a huge discrepancy. They have amazing skills in one area and significantly decreased ones in another. And apparently it actually occurs in about 1 in 10 autistic people to some degree. So that doesn't mean you're going to be a super genius on one side, but let's say you just have heightened abilities compared to average in one area. I thought this was pretty interesting, maybe giving you a little context of the Idiot Savin perk in Fallout 4. Either way, if you want to read up about this, there's actually a scientific paper kind of recapping the history and a lot of the findings. That's, not too technical. It's pretty easy to read that I will have linked down below. As always, again, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.